What's happening, people, and welcome to this week's episode of It's All Blakademik with your host, myself, Jordan Jarrett-Bryan. Just another heads up to our brand new website, Blakademik.com. It's up, go and check it out. All of our content is there. We've got plenty of videos, blogs, podcasts, and a whole lot more about the team behind Blakademik TV. So if you get a moment, go and check it out, Blakademik.com. It's Blakademik with no C's. Right, on the show this week, we're going to have a discussion around sex and porn and asking the central question, is porn destructive to black men? And to do so, on the panel here, I'm joined by Drew Hermes, who is a porn actor, just come on the pod this week, Drew. And I've also got here Sarah Adefiti here, who is a sex educator as well. Cheers for coming on the show, guys. So let me start off with you, Drew. Tell me about your first experience with sex and the first time that you remember seeing sex.
The first time I remember seeing sex, it was a bit weird. It was like at my nan's house. I've got like 7 uncles. Okay. So basically I can remember being, I don't know, it was about, probably about 12 or 13, and they used to watch porn.
Your uncles?
Yeah, they used to watch porn on cable. It was in German. Wasn't in English, and I used to sneak down on the steps and watch it through a gap through their TV, so they didn't really know I was watching it, but I was actually watching. The first experience is, I didn't get turned on with it, but I kind of knew it kind of made me know how babies were made. Okay. I thought, obviously, that's how babies were made, that's how I was made. So it wasn't something like, wow, what's that? It was just like, oh, that's how it's done. So yeah, that's basically the first time I kind of saw it anyway.
And what do you think would have happened if your uncles had caught you watching porn through the crack of the
yeah, they would have told me. They would have told me to go to bed or something. Right. I don't think it would have been. I was kind of young, so it wasn't like with their consent. So they was a lot older than me.
Okay. Sarah, same to you. Do you remember the first time that you ever saw sex? What was your first experience with it?
I don't actually know. I haven't thought about this question, but I think, like, I was always kind of aware of it. I never remember not knowing about sex, if that makes sense. Like, because I had 2 older brothers, so like inevitably, I think they must have like either said something or like maybe I saw something they were looking at. That, yeah, I don't remember ever thinking that, like, you know, there was like a stalk and, you know, delivering a baby, like, so that's quite good, I think, in a sense, but I don't really remember. Yeah.
So when I was younger, my first time of seeing sex was in a film, and I vividly remember my mum turning the channel over. Just turning the channel over. We don't watch that. She got a bit flustered and turned it over. I think I was about 12 at the time, maybe 13. I spoke to other friends of mine who are black who say similarly in their households, sex was something that wasn't discussed, it wasn't viewed, it was a little bit of a taboo type thing. Is that same with you guys?
Yeah, definitely. It was very taboo. Like, it's a bit weird. You don't really want for me, I wouldn't really want to discuss this with my parents. It's a bit, I don't know. Maybe my dad might have put a couple things in, might have said like, look, make sure you be careful out there, don't want to be having babies or whatever, but it was never something I really wanted to have a conversation with my parents, more my friends. So things like finding porn magazines under my dad's bed and things like that. So it was more, just finding out naturally, not being forced.
Sure.
Yeah, or told this is how it's done or this is how it's not done, yeah.
Was sex something that was openly discussed and quite liberal in your household, or was it like a...
Not at all. So I come from a Catholic country, like I'm Italian, so just that, the sole fact that I come from a Catholic country means that, but also my mum was a Jehovah's Witness, so that was even more orthodox. And my dad's Nigerian, so in general, he was just like he would just get angry at the thought of me even looking at a boy. So it's like...
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and it's quite funny, it's quite ironic, because even like when I came out to him like a few years ago as bisexual, he got angry at that. So it's just like, I'm not allowed to like men and I'm not allowed to like women. So like, what can I have? Like literally like nothing. So yeah, it was very like much like, you know, you stay a baby, and then that's, especially being the only girl, I think, in the family and the youngest, that was kind of the attitude. it wasn't really discussed really. And I think the only messages I heard about it was you're only allowed to have sex when you're married and you love someone. Even masturbation wasn't seen as a good thing, like as a thing that was allowed really. And
do you think that it's quite a common thing in black households where, you know, parents are not only, you know, uncomfortable at sex scenes being seen in the household, but just discussing it in an open, controlled way just isn't done? It's something that in most black households just doesn't happen?
I don't know about the average black household, because everyone's got obviously different backgrounds, right? But I think so much of that stigma, at least that from my household, came from Christianity.
Okay.
And like at least an orthodox type of Christianity. Obviously there's Christians out there who are open to talking about sex, who like are open to LGBT people, but my household definitely wasn't. And like my dad, from his background, even though he wasn't actually a strict Christian, was still very much like, no, you're not allowed to like have a sexuality, essentially. Like, because I think it scared him, that idea of like, I don't have control over my daughter, like I don't know what's gonna happen. He has a very negative view also of, just, I think, women's sexuality in general, I think, to be honest, like, not to par my dad. Like, I'm not trying to par him, but yeah, it's just a fear, I think, of not being able to protect his only daughter, like essentially.
So Drew, I spoke to a few people at work, a few white people at work, and in prepping for this show, and asked them what their experiences when they were younger were of sex. And not all of them, but some of them had said that their parents or their mum or their dad had kind of sat them down in a discussion around sex. And that was quite, you know, unusual. I was like, okay, so you actually had a controlled environment where sex was discussed. And I'm wondering, I don't think a lot of black boys in particular have that in their households for many of the reasons that Sarah just mentioned. Do you feel that the fact that many boys like yourself's first experience of seeing sex is porn leaves black boys' sex education at a disadvantage?
Well, it depends, because coming from a Caribbean background, most of our music is very sexual. So I'd learn a lot of stuff from that. Like, we like to gyrate, we like to whine, we like to do all these things. They're very sexual. So even not getting taught by our parents, listening to music and that is an influence as well. How we dance in the clubs and things like that. It's very sexual being Caribbean. It's seen to us as fun, but to other people, it might seem like basically having sex on the dance floor. So having things like that, it kind of eased in things like sex and not having to speak to my parents. Sorry, go back to the question.
I was just wondering, do you think that if many black boys, or even most black boys' first encounter of sex is porn, as opposed to maybe their white counterparts who had it spoken and sat down and this is sex and this is, you know, what it leads to and it's love's involved. Does that leave black boys' sex education 5 years later down the line? And also because it wasn't in a controlled environment, it was seeing porn. Does that leave black boys worse off when it comes to sex?
I could say it's both ways. I wouldn't say it's only one way. It depends. It depends. It's a hard thing to answer, because if you don't see porn, you might hear about it from your friends, or you might speak about it with friends or experiences. I wouldn't say porn, is definitely 100% determined in how you go out there and do it. And between black men, I wouldn't say that.
So do you think it's problematic that we don't discuss sex more openly in our households as a black community? And if so, why?
100%, like as a wider like societal thing, to be honest. And actually what you said about, you know, the people who you asked, whether like the fact that they've had conversations with their parents about that, I think that's quite an anomaly. Like as a sex educator, I don't find that many of the students that I speak to even have that kind of relationship with their parents where they can actually speak to their parents, even ask them a question about sex, because their parents are,
or anybody?
In general, like in the UK, I think, because so many of them are just terrified. This is both the parents and the students to just bring up that subject. Like, and as a society, like we're terrified to talk about sex. And I think like, I mean, in the black community, like I think I agree with you in terms of like, there are so many sexualized messages in our music. But I'm not really sure that we do have actual conversations about sex, like, very often. At least I haven't really found that, like, and I kind of find that, like, when someone does talk about sex, like, I'm someone who does openly talk about sex a lot of the time. Obviously, that is also why it's my job. But, like, I find that either intimidates people, or, like, makes certain men think that means I'm, like, easy or open, and it's like, actually, I don't want to have sex with you, I just want to talk about sex. Like, let's just talk about sex, like, it's an important thing.
And let's drill it down. When you have discussions about sex, that's not leading to wanting to have sex, but just a conversation about it, what does that conversation entail? What kind of things are spoken about and discussed in a general sex chat?
In a general sex chat. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, like, I've started running a thing with a few friends that we call Sexy Brunch. So we literally, like, all make brunch together, and then we just talk about a sex and relationship topic. But, like, what comes out in those kind of discussions is, like, things like, for example, the last one was about relationship structures. Like, actually, how does monogamy serve us? Is it helpful for us? Like, what are its downfalls? What are the other options? Or, like, things like, you know, the next one is going to be on masturbation. So things like, you know, what's our relationship with masturbation? Like, you know, what were the messages that we got about masturbation when we were younger? How have we internalized those? Like, it's all of those kind of things. So it's literally could be anything, because sex is, like, such a broad subject. But we all want to talk about it, but we just don't want to. Like, we're scared.
Why do you think it's important that we are more open about talking about sex? Why is it important?
Because if we don't talk about it, we fuck up so badly. And, like, there's so much, like, trial and error that's always obviously happened in the history of humanity. But, like, if we actually shared the knowledge that we had on sex and relationships, even, like, simple things like, you know, actually using fucking protection, like, and talking about consent. And by that, I don't mean, like, talking about consent so you don't go to jail, like, which I think is, like, actually the lens that a lot of young boys actually see it through. Consent is more about essentially, like, agreeing exactly what you'd all like to do, so that everyone has a pleasurable, beautiful experience that is a shared, like, gift, as opposed to, like, oh no, that way, like, she's not gonna, like, take me to court. Like, that's not what it's about. But I think, yeah, so it's things like that.
Okay, so Drew, talk to me about why did you want to get into the porn industry, and what were your friends and family's reaction when you told them, or they found out about it?
So yeah, me getting into porn, I knew an actress, actually just beginning, and it wasn't, when I first started, it wasn't really me getting into porn, I was just helping her. She had, like, a company, Artser, for real couples. So at that time I was kind of seeing her, and she just came to me and said, look, I've got a shoot for you. Do you want to get into the industry? Do you mind being filmed? So I thought about it for a little while, and I said, yeah, I don't mind. So filmed, and yeah, the director, he liked my stuff, and he was like, look, get a Twitter, here's a couple contacts, get out there, see what you can do. There's not a lot of black guys in the industry. So with hearing that, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna try and jump in there, find out who's the best directors, the best cameras to use, who's the best people to work with, how much they cost to hire them and things like that. So eventually I could get into it as a business. So it was more of a thing that I need to get into it to learn what's going on. And then once I learn what's going on, then I can create something that I think that the viewers would want to watch. Parent-wise, my mum was like, look at my sexy boy. yeah, she saw a picture, she started sending it to a couple of her mates. Really? Yeah, she sent it to a couple of her mates, and she's like, look at my boy. So anyway, my dad, he's a very business orientated, he's got loads of business, so he was like, is the money good? What's the money like? How much they paying you? Like,
so they were comfortable.
Yeah, my sister was like, oh, I knew you'd do something like that. So apart from that, it was all right. I had, like, my godfather, he came in, he thought I was like a crackhead or something, but I was just like, if you watched it, then how can you pass the blame or say anything to me? Pass judgment. You can't go on like I'm an addict or something over me having sex, something that I enjoy. So for me, me in porn and sex in general, it's more of something for me for fun. Some people have sex and it's attached to their heart. With me, it's not really like that. There's things that a girl would do, like little things that will affect me more than having sex with them. sex is not everything to me in that direction.
And do you still think there's a stigma around people from the black community around black people in porn?
Oh yeah, definitely, because most I would say there's about 4 or 5 black guys in the industry, and the other black guys, there's more, but they all cover their face. So they all cover their face because of the certain jobs that they do. They don't want to be seen by loads of people in the industry. So it's like the kind of fear factor. Where me, it was like, do you know what? If I want to do it, I'm going to do it. So there is people out there that it is for them, being black as well. They don't want to be, I don't know, they don't want to be called out by the black community, like, oh, he does porn or whatever. So yeah, it is a bit of a kickback to some people.
So why do you think the black community looks down its nose at people in porn?
I wouldn't have a clue because I don't look down. So you'd have to ask someone that looks down. I don't know why they look down. For me, it's more, as I said, it's more fun. Yeah, it's not really that serious to me. Yeah, okay. It's not that serious. So maybe they take it too serious, and yeah, sex as a whole thing is very even with white people, it's everyone kind of frowns at it. It's like being bad or something. Yeah, that's our kind of thing. It's like, it's wrong, but we're all born by it. So
why do you think the black community has a problem with porn and black people? Or why do you think there's a stigma around black people in porn from black people, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure that that's the only way around that it goes. Like, I agree with you. I think like it's in general, in societally.
It's not more so the black community, you don't think?
No, because like there's so many people who are really like sex negative and like don't see sex work as work, like, and porn is work. Like, it's, at the end of the day, it's like making a movie, innit? It is making a movie, like literally. And I think like, and the thing that you said about your parents, like, I think that's so great that that's the way that they responded. But so many other people, so many other people wouldn't respond to that, and like, in that way as well. And I think it's really sad because it's also like, especially what you said about your uncle, is like, so you watch porn, you have sex, what's the issue? I don't understand. What is your issue? Like, how are you ashamed of me when I'm doing the thing that you're actually enjoying? Like, so what's, So
let me ask you, do you think your experience would be different if you were a black woman? Do you think the perception, do you think the stigma, do you think the response?
I think, it's women in general. So I know we're talking about black, but I'm saying women in general, it's a bit of a, do you know what I mean? Seeing men jumping on a woman and, do you know what I mean? Working with various men in the industry. So I think it's, obviously it's sex work. So a lot of people, they don't like that.
Women come off work because they're seen
So it's sex work. So I don't know, it's like they think that the girl doesn't want to do it and they're being forced to do it. Maybe it's that kind of way of thinking where it's not. Everyone's above board. We all know what we're doing. We have our yeses and our nos. Do you know what I mean? So it's not something that we're forced into, but maybe it might seem to black people that you've been forced into that. So now there's something wrong with you. You're a drug addict, or you've got problems with your self-esteem, or you don't love yourself. It's more things like that. So
Sarah, do you think that porn creates unrealistic expectations, I suppose, for men and for women? But if we start with men, you know, does the stereotype, I suppose, still exist that if you're black and you're in porn, you're going to have the biggest ting and you're going to be big and strong and you're going to be able to, you know, have sex for 17 hours? Does that stigma still exist? And secondly, how problematic is that when the cameras go off? What does that do for black men watching porn in terms of expectations?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's like akin to like if you're watching Hollywood like romance movies to try and understand how to have a relationship, you're not really going to fare well. Like if you're going to look at Love Island and think that's how people need to look like and how they need to act, you're not going to fare well. Like, I think it's like akin to that. It's like people need to understand it's entertainment. And like actually like what I teach in schools sometimes is like when we do lessons specifically on porn and how it affects like things like body image and actually like the idea of like how relationships should be. What does come up is obviously like the whole like penis size thing, which like I think the average porn star has like an 8-inch penis, and like, but actually in the UK it's like the average man, like I don't know how they've measured this, I don't know what ethnicities they've used, but like the average UK size is like 5.5 inches.
Really?
So actually, the disparity between those two. But that's what I mean. Like, it's also like, you know, what ethnicities did you use, and like, how did you actually get that data? Like, was it self-reported? Obviously, someone's gonna like, I don't know. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of issues with it. But like, you know, even just say the statistics are real, like that disparity, or like what's that gonna do to a young man, or even just an adult man, like in terms of like seeing those differences in like penis size and thinking like, oh my god, like I'm much smaller, or like I need to have a big dick in order for me to like please someone, which is actually bullshit. Like, because like
No,
you don't, it's not all about penetration, and like that's also another thing, like which I think a lot of maybe mainstream porn, maybe not all porn obviously, like really focuses on like the money shot and like penetration. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
obviously.
for instance, if I didn't have a big dick, I wouldn't be in the industry. Like, a black guy in the industry has to have a big dick. You can't have a small dick.
Because the perception.
Yeah, because of the perception.
You must have a.
Okay. And there is, like, I have met guys with smaller dicks, and it's like, it's harder for them to make money because the whole cliche is that a black guy's got a big dick. Do you know what I mean? So if you haven't, you're not gonna do well in the industry. Like, that I've had people, they've tried to work and they just haven't got no more work because it's just like, that's what they want to see. Or that's what the
Mandingo stereotype
it is. But as she said, it's all about feeling. So even me being in porn, I learned things from that, how to open, like that make a girl feel good. Do you know what I mean? Before me. So before porn, I was very selfish. It was all about me, me, me. But as I got into porn, I learned how to open doors.
Literal doors.
Sarah, who's porn for? Is porn still for men, or do you think there's an equal, I suppose, intention for who porn is actually for?
I think if you're looking at mainstream porn, it's mostly
for men,
made for men. Well, because of also like it's thinking about also the production teams behind them, like how many of them are actually like run by women. It's also that, right? Like you were saying like earlier, it's also like about you know, how many black men are actually running the scene behind as well. But yeah, so it's that. It's also about who's making it, but also like obviously there's non-mainstream porn there's like feminist porn and things like that. Yeah, there was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot.
Our last question, you might remember in a second, kind of going back to the black community.
Yeah.
Because in the African and the Caribbean community, the church and faith and religion play such a strong part in many parts of our communities. Is that another reason why there's still that stigma around porn? Because, you know, if you're of strong faith, it's just seen as a wrong thing from the get-go. Does that also affect why we can't talk? Forget porn, just sex. Does that affect why we can't just talk about sex openly? Because so many black people are attached to their faiths in a very strong way. Does religion, I suppose, prevent openness around sex education?
I personally, from my own experience, I would 100% say yes. But again, I'm very aware that there's like different levels of like, different facets of like faiths that are okay with talking about sex and like that encourage that. But I haven't experienced that basically. Like I experienced a lot of orthodoxness and like this idea of purity and how it can't link with sex, which actually is complete bullshit. Like we were literally born to have sex. Like we only exist because we have sex. Like so why, like I don't understand why there is that stigma around it, because it's like it's not dirty. It's literally the reason why you exist. Like, so what's the issue? And
then from an industry perspective, Drew, you mentioned there's not many in this country anywhere black porn actors. Yeah. Are there any black figures, because it's $1 billion industry, are black people, you know, if the industry is largely built off of the Mandingo figure, are black people financially benefiting from the industry in any kind of senior or leadership positions? Yeah, not that I know of. More in America. But even in America, most of the companies are not run by black people. They're run by, you know, like the biggest company I know is Blacked, that they just usually just do interracial, and it's run by a French guy. Okay. So there's no one predominantly running a big company in the porn industry that I know of anyway. So that stops a lot of things as well, because then
yeah, it stops us workers, like more black people getting into industry, but there's not a platform for them to do it.
Okay. Just finally, do you feel that sex education within schools is sufficient? And are you a proponent of having, more families, maybe not the dinner table, but having that discussion with their kids around what sex is, what it leads to, the importance of safety, and the importance of obviously love and respect within that as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, so first of all,
school, sorry, there's a lot of questions off through.
That's cool. First of all, like, no, there isn't enough sex education. Like, we are working on that. Like, as in, like, obviously there's been the new kind of guidelines, but even those were, like, there were issues with those. They're a bit, like, outdated. But there's lots of, like, really brilliant sex education, like, startups and organizations that are, like, working towards that. So one of the ones that I work for is called Sexplain. And there's also, like, Brooke. And, there's loads of, like, platforms that are trying to bring more sex education to schools. However, it's increasingly difficult for them to do that because they don't have the funding, because the funding is being removed from them, because, I don't know, it's being put into something else, or in general, it's not seen as a priority. And yet, like, if you teach, like, children, like, emotional intelligence, like, communication, like, relationship skills, which also translates into, like, sex, and obviously having, like, facts about sex, things like STIs, things like, I suppose, like, communication and consent and things like that, like, that translates into having a better, like, more empathic society anyway. So it's a long-term investment that needs to happen.
And just briefly, do you understand parents that say they don't want sex education taught in schools? Or is that a dangerous kind of stance
I
to
understand
take?
that they're afraid, but I don't agree. Yeah.
It is that. It's just so afraid of their kid watching a penis and a vagina, which is, it's ridiculous.
Do you think it should be law? Do you think it should be law that in schools all kids are taught sex education?
Yeah, they should be. It should be just for safety.
Taking that away from the parents, I suppose, right to teach it the way they want to teach it in their household.
Well, yeah, it's up to the parents if they want to teach their kid about it, but I reckon because you're at school when you're young and you go there every day, it's an easier way to break it down than your parents. I think for me, if my parents sat me down, it would be kind of cringy. I don't want to hear about my dad telling me how to do things. You know what I mean?
But surely it's more than just the physical. Surely it's more about sex is a physical act, but there's also the emotional element. There's also the respecting the other person. There's also the marriage element.
But I think I'd rather see it from a teacher's teacher's way than my parents. It would be, maybe someone else's parents would be more easier, but my parents talking about all of that, it's a bit...
You're not on it.
Yeah, like, I don't really want to hear it from them.
The truth is also that most of the parents that say, no, they want my children to, like, learn about this, will not actually teach their children because they weren't taught in the first place. And this is the thing, like, it trickles down, innit? Like, if we were never taught sex education in schools, if we never had, like, inclusive sex education apart from don't have sex or you die, like, then, like, of course you're going to be afraid to speak to your child about sex. Like, you haven't been taught the right language to have that conversation. There's actually another great organization called Teaching the Talk. That is a startup, again, like, teaching teachers how to teach sex education, but it's, like, young people led, which is really important because, like, teachers are one of, they're part of, like, our generation of people who missed out on sex education. And they also need to be taught how to actually approach that subject. It just trickles down.
So just in conclusion, both of you, just very briefly, you don't think that porn leaves black men at a disadvantage in terms of their sex education?
There's loads of factors. I don't think porn does. The reason why I don't is because, I'm in it, and most of the people that I know that watch it, they're okay. They're not like youngsters. Well, I work with a lot of youngsters. I also do music, so I work with a lot of youngsters, and what they're talking about in their lyrics and things like that, it's still like they know about sex. Sure. You're watching porn or without it, it's not going to make a difference.
Agreed.
I partially disagree, just because I think, like, the biases that can be created through people just seeing that as their only form of sex education is obviously going to be damaging. Like, but that's only if you don't understand that that's entertainment and that's not how you're meant to look or how sex is meant to happen. Like, but but that only comes with the lack of education on other aspects. So yeah, it's not just porn by itself.
Sure.
Yeah, because there's loads of different kind of porn. Like there's extreme, and then there's porn that you'll probably watch, and it's so loving and caring and delicate, and there's a whole range of different. Yeah, there's a wide spectrum. It's not just one form.
Listen, guys, cheers for coming on the show this week. That's all. It's all Blakademik. Don't forget to subscribe to our socials. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we are also on Instagram. Check out our website as well, www.itsallblakademik.com. Until next week, peace.